Hey, discerned listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, Tania and Syngin. Let's go back in time and watch.
I don't
Relax.
Don't laugh at me, Syngin.
Okay, so she was in a car accident, if I remember right. That's why she has the foot brace on. And I don't know why, but he kind of lurched forward. It sounded like maybe it was a mistake. I think he was trying to go backwards and he accidentally had it in drive. And she reacted and he laughed like, oh, wow, I must have scared you. Was that fair of him? Did he think it was just kind of funny? But now she's starting to cry. I'm guessing because of the trauma she went through with her car accident. It's common that, and I don't know, maybe this is not what it is, but it's common to, after a life-threatening event, a very scary event like a car accident, even if it from the outside sounds like a quote-unquote minor fender bender, if you have a jolt of distress in your brain, you can associate what's happening with that terror, like sudden movements or potentially hitting another car with your car. And then later on, because of the trauma sticks with us, anything that even if it's like not life-threatening or not even necessarily a car crash threatening, your body just goes, just all those fear responses and adrenaline and neurological responses kick in that is designed to protect us from terror. It seems that we evolved this system to protect us from predators and other kinds of dangers when we experienced those kinds of things 100, 200,000 years ago. We learned we evolved to learn from very scary experiences and to avoid them. If a tiger comes out of the bushes and attacks and kills our friend, then it serves us to associate all of that with terror and death and to be very distressed. Without any kind of evaluative process, our body just says, let's just skip any kind of evaluation, any kind of prefrontal cortex. Everything that just happened, encode all of that with utter terror, because we want the human, the organism, to avoid anything associated with that. Avoid places where tigers hang out. Avoid tigers. Avoid if you hear a sound that sounds like a tiger coming out of the woods, avoid that too. And those humans, seemingly, who had that mechanism lived longer because even if 99 times out of 100 it's not a tiger, it's better to play it safe, right? So 100 times or 99 times there's a rustle in a bush and you run away and it's not a tiger, it serves us to on average to run and to not stop and think, is it a tiger? It's just like automatic, boom, emotional reaction, terror, run. You also learn not only to run for tigers, but also everything associated with that. Like I said, bushes and maybe even that time of day or something. And so for us, that very useful mechanism can be applied in situations that aren't necessarily helpful to us, where we get in a car accident and our body is saying, it doesn't have the ability to differentiate between like helpful distress and unhelpful distress. And so it's like, okay, let's just encode that entire experience. Anything associated with cars or anything associated with fender benders or sudden movements or feeling out of control in a car, let's just avoid that at all costs. And the way I'm going to make this organism avoid it at all costs is anything that reminds us is that you're going to have a lightning bolt of distress just, immediately pass through your body, and your heart rate is going to go up and your hands are going to sweat and your brain is going to alter, where it's sending its oxygen, and all these just, signals of the impulse to fight, flight, freeze, appease, or faint. And it can be hard. But there is treatment for it. I've treated people with this very PTSD. We call them simple trauma, simple PTSD, in that it doesn't involve a loved one that abused you or something along those lines, and over time. And what it is you become habituated. You, through exposure therapy, become habituated to these kinds of things. So, for example, the clients that I've worked with on similar traumas is we would work on a regimen of baby steps toward being able to withstand this kind of thing. And every baby step along the way, your body becomes habituated to that stimulus. We're not talking about our prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex, our conscious mind, knows that, a car lurching forward isn't a big deal. Even a fender bender isn't that big of a deal. But our body, which is, shall I say, 99% of our psyche and personhood, it does not involve the prefrontal cortex, our conscious mind, our conscious control over our reality. And so when we're trying to treat PTSD, we're trying to convince that 99% that everything's okay. And the only way to do that is to show the body that it's okay. You can't tell the body. You can't say, don't worry about it, cars are fine, or don't worry about it, needles are fine, or don't worry about it, heights are fine, or don't worry about it, in tight closed spaces are fine. You have to show the body. The body learns through, and a lot of our brain learns through experience, not through didactic learning, information. So it's more complicated than that, but that's one way to think about it that is helpful. Anyway, so with her, we would want to get her to a place where she could be in a similar situation with a lurching car while someone else is driving and not have a physiological reaction. How do we get there? Well, we don't want to do that up front. What we want to do is, and we would work with her on what her triggers might be. Maybe it would be, first step would be to watch minor fender benders on YouTube and to experience a little bit of distress, not as much as this, but watch those videos, distress, but and you prolong that distress, and eventually the body just habituates to it. It's just like, oh, well, nothing horrible is happening, so I'm going to turn down the distress on this because so we have this other evolved mechanism, which is things that are sustained and not super distressful, but slightly distressing or slightly annoying or noticeable is another aspect, is the body attenuates the noticing of it or the reactivity to it, because the body knows you can't be constantly reacting to everything in your environment. You have to get used to certain things. This is why when you have a cat in a litter box and your house smells like cat poop, you become habituated to it over time, because it doesn't do you any good to constantly register that signal, that those compounds are going into your nose, it's registering on certain nerves in your olfactory system. If you were constantly aware of that smell for years and years and years, it would distract you from paying attention to other things. So the brain has this ability to say, like, okay, this is one of those things that we should just stop paying attention to because it'll distract them. Same goes with like wearing clothes. Like for me, during the pandemic, I wore extremely comfortable clothes all the time because I never left the house. And it was a slow process, but 6 months in, I was wearing sweats and very comfortable shirts, and comfortable socks and comfortable sandals, and never wearing dress shoes or hard pants, or the only time I'd dress up would be for the videos. And when the pandemic lifted, or I got vaccinated, actually is a more accurate term because we're still in the middle of the pandemic. I don't know when this is going to air. So, but anyway, point is that I started wearing what in this house we call hard clothes, and I had a really hard time adjusting to it. I was just wearing regular jeans, comfortable jeans that I wore and thought were on definitely the comfy side before the pandemic. And here I am wearing the same jeans and I'm just like, ugh, it's so restricting. Well, why is that? Well, because since I was, probably 3 years old until the pandemic started, every day of my life, I wore hard clothes. I wore uncomfortable things, restricting things, restrictive garments. And my body just got used to it because over time, the body's like, let's just not pay attention to this. So we try to use that system to counteract this distress spike. So we gradually expose the person to the stimuli so that, we move up the ladder and at every step, we prolong that exposure until the body goes, oh, let's just not notice this anymore. And then you go up another ladder and there's a little bit of distress and prolong that, and then the body turns down. And eventually you can get to almost getting in a car crash and you don't have any physiological reaction. By the way, this works. PTSD, if you suffer from a phobia, OCD, any kind of PTSD, any kind of trauma reactivity, this works. Sometimes people talk about EMDR, but I don't use EMDR. I use prolonged exposure. I use a tailored version of prolonged exposure to each individual client that accounts for dissociation. Also, listen to my episodes on trauma therapy, but it works. And so if you suffer from there's things that therapy we can't really know for sure if it's going to work for someone. The chance of it completely eliminating your symptoms. If you have disorganized attachment, for example, there's not a pretty good, I wouldn't tell someone that with a year of therapy, your symptoms of disorganized attachment will go away. I would never say that. In fact, if you have a pretty good dose of disorganized attachment, in all likelihood, you'll never not have attachment insecurity. But when it comes to this sort of thing, the therapy can work and eliminate your symptoms. So if you have a phobia of needles, if you have a phobia of driving, you have a phobia of enclosed spaces, you have a phobia of people, you have a phobia of speaking in public, you have a phobia of swallowing pills, you have a phobia of you worry about throwing up in public. I'm just trying to think of the other common things. You have a phobia about eating certain things. You have a phobia about, being poisoned or something. There's various different common phobias, but there's a lot of different kinds. Therapy can help. If you find a specialist who utilizes either EMDR or prolonged exposure, there are other types of evidence-based therapies, then you can expect to have a pretty good chance of complete symptom elimination, anyway. But I don't know if that's what's happening. Let's watch.
You okay, my baby?
No.
Did you get it? What's wrong?
I
just went a little bit forward.
It wasn't a little bit, baby. It was a...
So she's having a meltdown, which makes total sense. And she's probably a little irrational right now of anger at him. But if her PTSD, if she has it, is emerging, we can't expect people to be differentiated. And what this points to is that she hasn't, I think, had proper therapy from the trauma, and he hasn't been involved. When I treat people like her with this sort of trauma, I bring in their family members, or at the very least, I have a conversation with them, because they need to be support people. They need to understand so that they can help to eliminate the symptoms as well. And a big part of it is helping them understand trauma reactivity. So if he had that kind of education from a qualified professional, he would know, oh crap, stop the car, honey, let's do our breathing. I'm sorry that happened. You're right to have that reaction. You were in a car accident. What do you need? Let's do our breathing. Let's relax. You're safe. What do you need? But he's not doing that. He's just like, what's happening? Because if you don't know about PTSD, you'd be like, why are you crying right now? I lurched forward a little bit, and you're like, now you're yelling at me, and then that could get into a fight because you don't understand how PTSD works.
Why? And I just see all these cars in front of us. It was scary, and then you laugh. Since my car accident months ago, I still have panic attacks, and it's really bad.
Okay, so sounds like PTSD. And she's saying that she has panic attacks and it's really bad. Okay, go to a specialist. Did you even consult? When you broke your foot, what, you didn't just go home and go like, I don't know, I can't walk on it. It's really bad. Anyway, moving on in life, you go to a freaking physician. If you're suffering from panic attacks, from a psychological condition, go to a specialist. You don't need to suffer.
At the very beginning, when it first happened, I wasn't sleeping. It's really affected even how safe I feel when other people are driving me now. So it's really hard for me. It gives me such big anxiety.
So it's great. She is exhibiting a lot of differentiation and maturity and taking responsibility. She's not blaming. She's like, she could say, he's a terrible driver, but she's not when she's calm. She's just like, since the accident, I have tremendous anxiety and it's hard for me. And yeah, so that's good. That's step one. Step two, treatment.
No, but I just this whole kind of little nervous laugh. I haven't driven in South Africa, driven stick for a while.
I didn't know it was a nervous laugh. I felt like you were laughing at me.
No, babe, no.
Okay, so he's being nice and she is listening to him. So, this couple, they swing so wildly between very functional, mature, taking responsibility, giving the other person the benefit of the doubt communication, to what I'm terming to be what looks to be codependent and underfunctioning behavior. I can't know that. I'd have to talk with them, but pretty locked in codependent or at least overfunctioning, underfunctioning dynamic. But I'm really proud of them in this moment. And for her, she's not blaming. Just imagine Angela or I don't know, just a lot of different people on this show, what they would do in a situation like this. And she's recovering pretty quickly. He's like, oh my God, I'm sorry. No, I'm not laughing at you. I'm sort of nervous about, I think he was I don't think he was laughing at her. I think he was just like, well, that was funny. I lurched forward and you freaked out. And yeah, it's just kind of funny. So they're recovering pretty well.
Sorry, babe, I didn't mean to be like that.
Syngin, you're telling me who you want to be, the type of life you want to have. You're telling me all of these things and I'm waiting.
But even pushing me, I think sometimes won't even help. But I'm just...
I don't know what will help.
So I haven't been showing this whole fight because it was kind of a reiteration of their previous fights, but they're in South Africa now and his family is around, and I think he's a little bit emboldened by that, which I think he's taking a little bit of advantage of that, knowing that she doesn't have support, but they fought about this before. She wants a stable life. I think what's happening for her underneath all this is, because she's basically saying you have no direction, you're irresponsible, but her she's saying you're not giving the United States a chance. We got married. I thought we were going to live in the States forever, and now all of a sudden you're coming to South Africa, and his family is there saying, look, he misses his family, da 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 da, and it's like, well, how about you tell me that before we get married? If that was even on the table, which apparently it was, you should have mentioned that. And Tanya's agreeing. She's like, yeah, I get it. He misses his country, but that wasn't the agreement. Now, and Tanya is also open. She's saying, yeah, I'm not saying no to that, but anyway, I think another part of it for Tanya is, look, if he's going to do this sort of thing for the rest of our life, just sort of suddenly say, let's move here or my life is over, then I don't know if I want to do this. And I think she's hanging everything on a career for him. If he had a career, then everything would come into fruition for her, that they would have stability. They could start to have kids. She could depend on him, not only financially, but also, I think, emotionally. I think underneath everything is this emotional worry of someone taking care of her. I think I'm going to take a guess and say that she's always been the one to take care of other people, partially because of circumstance when she was growing up, and also if you're codependent, you tend to, I don't know if she is, but you tend to attract under functioners who you're always taking care of. And so I think she's just like, I'm tired of doing everything. I want an equal partner. And her way of gauging that is a career. a real solid career from him. And so of course, it's practical to want your partner to have a career, but I think it's deeper than that for her. And I don't know if she's aware of that. Of course, there's various different ways of communicating it. And on one hand, she can be functional and differentiated and fair by saying, hey, I need you to pull your own weight here. I can't have you just be like not working as an adult for the rest of your life. You have to contribute, which makes total sense. But on the other hand, she will dip into overfunctioning and put him down and say, without him having a chance, it's like that scene where Ziad is in the United States and Rebecca's friend is just like, what kind of deadbeat doesn't work? And Rebecca's like, he can't work. It's illegal for him to work. It's a part of the K-1 visa. He can't work for X amount of months. And then the friend doubles down and is just like, well, I don't know. He seems like a deadbeat to me. And you're just like, huh? So she seems really locked in on predicting that he is a deadbeat. He's starting to sound like a deadbeat, by the way. Also, when you met him, he didn't have any signs of being a career man. So, this is the classic projective identification. It's the classic repetition compulsion where, from the beginning, she's like, I'm on a path. I have a plan. I want to have kids. I want a man who has a career. I want to have the white picket fence. I want the American dream. I want to live in the United States. Okay, well then why did you date and get engaged and marry a bartender from South Africa who's a free spirit who talks about maybe not having kids for the rest of his life? Like, why would you do that? If this is so important to you, why did you even start dating him? He was a bartender who was partying hard in South Africa and talking all the time about how he's a free spirit and doesn't think about the future. Totally. But so this is our repetition compulsion. This is our projective identification. This is our need to recreate relationships subconsciously. The need for finding an underfunctioner to be our complement to our codependency. We do these things subconsciously, and then it hurts us. The very thing that in the beginning, it wouldn't be uncommon for someone like Tanya in the beginning of the relationship to say, I really love him because he kind of offsets my rigidity. I'm a planner and he's more free-spirited, and I really love that about him because he kind of loosens me up. Fast forward 2 years and you're like this.
Tanya's a forceful girl. She knows what she wants. She'll put Syngin on his place, but Syngin won't be put on his place unnecessarily. Obviously, they've got a lot of compromising to do.
Yikes. So the father is framing it as a power play. I don't really see it that way. I see it more as the way I've described it before. The other thing I'll say is that I absolutely understand where Tanya is coming from. And I've said this before. It's like he is exhibiting more and more irresponsible, just his approach, similar to other kind of underfunctioners like Nicole or Asuelu. You hear the way that they talk and you're like, that doesn't sound like it's a recipe for success. And so I get that. Also, this like, all of a sudden I don't want to have kids, or I'm, thinking about not having kids. Like, where's that? And then it's like, you want to live in South Africa? Like, why haven't you? So I get it, but now I knew from the beginning that they didn't work out, because the only reason why I'm going back is because Syngin is on single life, and so I can see why they break up in the future.
But how long do I wait? And when is it unfair to him for me to give up, or when is it unfair to me to keep waiting?
You'll decide.
Like, what is that healthy balance?
Yeah, I think what you should do is maybe just step back and let Syngin also.
No, but she doesn't see focus in that. Then that takes too much time.
But that's where trust comes in.
So if I were Tanya's friend, I would say, okay, Tanya, in a lot of things that I would talk with her about, I would say, let's just imagine a future, because if you were to, jump into the flow of Syngin and stop trying to swim upstream, here's a possible life. You live wherever, maybe it's South Africa, maybe it's the States, maybe it, sort of goes back and forth. Syngin has spotty employment over time, but, you know, he probably will work 70% of the time, not have a good job, but, you know, he'll probably drink because he's always drank, and until he decides he is drinking too much, he'll probably always drink. And you drink too. You know, she admits that she drinks a lot as well. Y'all should look at that. But anyway, and maybe you'll have a couple kids, and you'll probably be the main parent, and he will be like the fun dad who helps with parenting, which is ridiculous when a parent is like, okay, I'll help you. It's like, how about you just take 50%? But anyway, how does that sound to you? Because if she's like, no, I don't want that, which would be understandable, then you say, well, then I think you got to cut your losses. Whereas she might be like, well, I mean, it's not the ideal, but I do love him. Because I think she has this, at least in this state, this sort of black and white thing of like, unless I see this, there's no other path to happiness. And there are, if she wants them.
What have I done the past 2 years?
No,
like
but
literally,
leave
have
it.
left him. And when I left him, you know what he did? He went and drank and partied with friends.
Your wife said a lot now.
Yeah, as usual. I'm sorry about that. I didn't want this to play out in front of everybody. It's
Welcome to married life.
no, man. That's married life. I'm not gonna be married if it's like this. No.
Okay. So the dad is like, well, this is normal. And Syngin's like, well, if this is normal, I don't want it. Okay. All right, so what would be good for Syngin to do? I mean, she's, you know, being ganged up on to some extent, not terribly, but Syngin should go to her and say, look, I'm sorry. I understand what you want. You want me to live in the States. You want me to have kids. You want me to have a career path. And that's just not for me. You know, they don't have that conversation in a calm way. It's always in the midst of a fight. So if that were true for Syngin, you know, just own it. Just be like, look, this is me. And I probably should have told you this a long time ago, but this is who I am. And I don't think I can really change that. So how are we going to make this work, or can it work? And that would be an okay conversation to have. But he doesn't really do that. He tends to just say, you pressure me. He'll suddenly change his mind, and then she has a reaction, and he's like, how come you're having a reaction instead of a proactive approach?
I think, you know, between me and Tanya can become very heated. I think especially if we're in front of people, you know, we both want to be heard and nobody wants to be belittled. That's when the bad comes out, and, you know, and things more were said.
That's interesting, because I think that more applies to him in this situation. I think he was emboldened by his family and was more flippant towards her than he normally is. Normally he can be more reasonable and less rigid.
I just need to say one thing, is imagine if I ever talked like this in front of my family, you would have the biggest fit. You make me feel like I can't share any of our problems because you don't want anyone
I didn't
against
stop
you.
you from sharing anything. I let you go.
That's
What's the
what I'm
problem
saying.
now?
You started it. Imagine if I started anything in front of my family.
What did I
How
start?
many times?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's even true, but Tanya is still at it, still triggered, and yeah, I can't imagine that working. I mean, what's he supposed to say? You're right, I'm a jerk face, because I don't even necessarily think it's true what she's accusing him of. So if I were her friend, I'd be like, just, you know, sleep on it, wake up, your body will calm down, and you'll be able to approach this. I can't see a constructive approach coming out of your brain at this moment.
Like, so what are you?
Of course. Again, I'm the crazy one.
No,
Okay.
I'm just trying to figure
Grab
out.
my food. Have a good
I asked
day.
you a
I apologize,
question.
everyone.
I understand Tanya's point of view. Obviously, a woman wants a guy to be a bit more stable. But once again, I feel she did push a bit too much tonight.
Okay, so we're hearing from the mom saying that she understands where Tanya is coming from, but in that she wants her husband to be more stable, but she also thinks that Tanya took it too far. Okay, I mean, the mom would know more than we would, more of the details and whatnot.
I am not a structured person, and it hurts me seeing her hurt by my actions, because that's not how I want.
Did she miss?
Okay, that was differentiated and fair. He's like, I'm an unstructured person, and it hurts me to see her hurt by my nature. Yeah, that's it makes sense. If that's who you are, she's a planner and he's a unstructured free spirit. Yeah. And he is sad that it hurts her. That's a really good way of putting it. Instead of saying like, oh, she's a jerk face, she's always trying to control me. He's just like, I have this personality trait that bothers her, and it hurts me to see that happen. So yeah. So go to her right now and say that. Look, I'm a free spirit. I'm sorry that bothers you, and I get why it bothers you, and it hurts me to see me hurting you with my free-spiritedness.
No, in the beginning, she didn't quite know, we were just going through like just the stage, we were just happy, and whoever we are. But as time progressed, she saw that I was laid back, I wasn't, I'm a procrastinator, as I say at times. And
You're individuals.
Oh, he did. So I didn't know that. He says he's a procrastinator, I think meaning a professional procrastinator. So what does that mean? I don't know, obviously, but a lot of the reason why people procrastinate is because they don't want to do things. People often will ask me, I have this procrastination problem. How do I fix it? And by the way, I did a whole deep dive on procrastination, I believe. I've done over 1,200, 1,300 episodes at this point, so of audio episodes, and something like 700 or 800 90 Day Fiancé reaction videos, if you can believe that. Anyway, so in my investigation on the research and on my thinking about procrastination and my treatment of clients regarding procrastination, the first thing that I will ask is, okay, what are you procrastinating on? Do you really want to do it? Because a lot of people want to do things, but they don't actually want to do things. A prime example that I frequently will hear is people will see that I'm playing guitar or piano or something, and they'll be like, I've always wanted to play guitar. And I'm like, okay, well, what stopped you? Because you can get a guitar for like $50. So if that's out of your price range, okay. But if it's not, then what's stopping you? And plus, like, you could probably even just borrow someone else's guitar or borrow mine. I've let friends of mine borrow my guitars when they were trying to learn. One of my friends still has a blue Strat knockoff, light blue. I liked that thing from 20 years ago. Anyway, you should get that back. So do you want to learn guitar, or do you actually want to learn guitar? Because for me, I was obsessed with the guitar and always kind of have been with music, and nothing could stop me. If I was tired or busy with something else, or had other things on my plate, I always made time for music. And especially when I was really young, I would come home from school and just pick up my extremely terrible guitar that was terrible. I still have it. And just pluck away, just sit. I would lay in my bed and I would listen to the radio and I'd just play along. And I didn't have any lessons, no one, and I just slowly started figuring things out. And that's how I learned how to play guitar, because I really wanted it, obviously. Other people want to play guitar. And so that's the first thing is, do you want to do that, or do you want to do that? Because if you want, then you should just recognize that. And the other part of this is you have to be in connection with yourself. You have to be in connection with your wants, and some people aren't, so that can take years to develop. But a lot of people are either react. So there's, and then if there's two other things that I would explore with him, which is, are you resisting your nature? Maybe your nature is to be a free spirit and to just live in the moment and go date. Maybe you need a lifestyle that is good for that. Some kind of job that allows for that kind and lifestyle. And maybe you live. I have friends like this who live extremely cheaply, and they surf all the time, or they do art all the time, and they just figured out a way to live in the zone of their own preferences. They want to have a bunch of money. They want to have a huge house, but they don't really actually want it. They want day to day, much more so, to not be locked down in that way. And I would explore that with him, and stop acting and forcing yourself to not be yourself. Like, just be yourself. The other thing is, are you in a constant state of opposition because you're stuck at the age of 13? Some people developmentally are stuck at the age of 13 or even 3 years old, where you're trying to assert your own identity by opposing other people. And if you're in that psychological state, then you will just oppose everything, because you're like, you can't make me do it, even to themselves. And I've worked with clients like this where, there's no one telling them what to do, and they impose something on themselves, like, okay, I really want to, paint the outside of my house or something, because I really hate the way my house looks. I hate it, though it's all splotchy and stuff. I really, really want to paint my house. And then quickly, this other part of them kicks in, and it's just like, you can't make me do that. I'm not going to do that. You can't, to themselves. They're having this internal conversation with themselves. And then, and the idea of the chore of painting the house, they mostly identify with the, you can't make me do it. And they don't even realize that they're rebelling against their own goal. And so it creates this procrastination behavior, but really what's happening is an extremely conflicted inner life, and healing needs to occur in order for that 13-year-old to become a 17-year-old. 13-year-olds, how they develop is you allow them some freedom, not all freedom, but you allow them some freedom. They want to wear those pants, and those pants are ridiculous, but they're not, illegal. And so, you're going to let them have that freedom. They also want to stay out till 3 a.m. in the morning. You're not going to let them do that. They want to hang out. They want to go to a party and maybe, smoke a doobie secretly behind the house. And you're not excited about them potentially smoking weed, but you're going to give them that little bit of freedom and see how they do with that. They don't want to go to school anymore. You're not going to let them do that. It depends. Every parent's different, but you're letting them. They're saying, "But I want to do this." And so you're giving them a little bit of freedom so that they can say, I'm my own person, I'm competent enough, my parents trust me enough, and eventually they get to a point where they can dictate for themselves. By the time they're 18, hopefully, particularly by the time they're 22, they can start making their own choices. They're in charge. The superego has been internalized, and they will say, I shouldn't smoke weed all the time, I should get a job, I should pay my bills. They just operate from their own motivation. They don't need an outside, because they had that slow dilemma being worked out between responsibility and freedom. Because if you impose too many rules on a 13-year-old, then they're not allowed to experiment with freedom. If you let them do whatever they want, then they don't practice responsibility. It depends, and there are a lot of people who have these kinds of complexes. Some of you might have or know people with these complexes, and it's hard to adjust for when they're older. So that'd be another thing. But anyway, he's saying he's a procrastinator, and so he's taking responsibility for that, which is good.
But you need to grow in the same direction. But that comes with time. And that's the difficult part. 90 days was a short period to make a big decision.
Yeah.
I feel it's Syngин's personality as well, man. He is who he is,
Yeah.
And then she needs to accept him for who he is.
Yeah, but, he could adjust. And the same thing I'm saying to Tanya, I could absolutely say to him. It's like, if you're such a free spirit and that's like a requirement for your life, why did you marry a self-proclaimed planner who wanted to have a bunch of kids and get married and have, why did you do that? Like, that's irresponsible. So I would say that if they want to make this work, they both have to adjust. All right, well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.